Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Business Transition Roadmap. Today we have Cody Teets with us, and I am so excited to have her. She is one of our newest additions to the Transition Strategists, and she is a transition guide. Just has so much background and so much experience. So I'll just ask you, Cody, first, welcome. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And before I get into me, I just want to say, as I've dug in and I've done more research, I'm really excited to work with you. And most importantly, to see what you have created over your own experiences and journeys. So I'm really happy to be here. So everybody, I have 30 plus years working in the franchise business, specifically McDonald's restaurants, and did that during college with every intention to leave. And then I stayed, but I was fortunate and able to rise through the ranks. And ultimately, when I decided to retire, which was a young age, which was good for me, but I decided to retire, I was the VP of Franchise Relations for the U.S. business. And that's really what I did the majority of my career. And then I was on a board for Regis University, which is a Jesuit Catholic university. And I was on that board, so I was asked to be interim president for a year. And I found that very exciting as well. So much of my passion is around helping people be their best selves. And that can happen with business owners, or it can happen with students and faculty. So there's that alignment there. From a non-work side, I married my high school sweetheart. We have 36 years anniversary today.
Congratulations.
And I have 2 adult sons. So it's been a journey. It's been a fun journey. And I'm really glad to step into this next round of opportunity.
Nice. Yeah. And just what a blessing to have you here working with us. And I'm looking forward to so many wonderful things. So, Cody, you have so much going on in your world and have so much history and knowledge. What was it that, what was your passion in coming to work with us, and also really thinking about the business transitions for people? What drove you here?
So again, as I've said, one of my career passions is all about talent and developing top talent. And that's both, I learned at McDonald's on the company side as well as the franchisee side. And we often take for granted that just because people are given the title leaders, that doesn't mean they're always truly have the competencies or skill sets as leaders. So when I think about that, that's why I wanted to do this, because it's such an emotional decision for people to sell their business to their adult children. And I probably worked on over 100 transitions, with 50 of them plus moving forward, because sometimes they don't all come to fruition. Sometimes folks need to take a pause, or they need to go a different direction because of either what the owner or successor wants to do. And I think a lot of it just starts with, the earlier you can have some of these strategic conversations, the better for the family, the better for the business. And ultimately, when you think about trying to create a successor as a family member, or even a partner as a successor, they'll never be exactly like the owner. So it's about give and take and understanding each other's strengths and opportunities, and also making sure that the successor has enough time to learn the business in a well-rounded way so that they can be as successful as their parents.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting thought in the idea of a successor having the opportunity to really have some time to learn and to grow. And, we have that workshop called Metamorphosis that, that both the owner, the current owner, is going through a metamorphosis, hoping, I think, to become a terrific mentor, right? Mentor, teacher, which is a whole different skill set than they had as a leader, business owner, doer, decision maker. And then you've got the successor over there who is probably a little bit terrified, doesn't know what, from the owner's perspective, probably doesn't even know what the owner thinks they do. They really don't know that. And they're trying to morph into this owner leader role. And, that takes a lot of time to do that.
Does I would say, part of the success of the learning from McDonald's is they've been around since the 1960s. And so they have probably learned through their own school of hard knocks what to do and not to do. But a lot of the franchisors or franchisees rather, when they were setting their children up for success and they felt that their adult children would want to come into the business, usually after college, they would bring them in and they would start creating that roadmap. So to your point, they can learn the business. They can learn all aspects of the business, because a focus just on marketing is probably not going to allow them to be the CEO, or a focus just on finance isn't going to allow them to be the CEO. So how do they learn all of those departments and learn them well? And maybe even if there's the amount of time, that's why I say time is so important, to give them leadership positions in each of those decisions, because the best learning comes from experience, not watching it done, not reading about it, but actually experiencing it. So the more time you can think through that up front, and the more you can involve the successor up front, the better the success that I've seen many times.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's a great explanation. And so I know that you have quite a bit of experience and knowledge with those transitions. What are some of the things that that you really have seen that really have not worked? I think that, at least our listeners, I think we have a good idea of, it's a good idea to start early, and it's a good idea to have good communication, and it's a good idea to have a strategy, and it's a good idea to do some of those things. But even though sometimes we know those are good practices and to give yourself time, many times we don't do that.
So I'm going to write myself a couple notes right now, because I think the first one is to accept that we're not going to live forever. And I actually had franchisees tell me, "You're never going to get me out of this business. You're going to drag me out of my restaurants with my boots on." And that's really detrimental to the successor. And one, they didn't teach their successor how to be successful. Two, there's rarely a way that somebody can just step in on day one and learn how the business operates. And three, the financial part of that, because always there has to be a financial component that's going to involve the children, especially if there's multiple children, because you can just say, "Here, take it." But that doesn't mean they'll do it and do it well. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is really defining what you want as a outcome when you exit the restaurants, or rather the business, when you exit the business. Because oftentimes, especially with multiple children, the parent hasn't asked that adult child, "What do you want to do? Do you want to stay in this business? Do you want to go try something else? If you were to stay in this business, what do you think your strengths and opportunities are?" And so what ends up happening there is oftentimes all the children think they're going to be the CEO successor, and that's not the reality. And sometimes the adult children will say, "Well, I only want to work here if one of my brothers or sisters is not the successor," because they've had these family dynamics their whole life, and they don't want to continue that into their adult career. So just knowing that, I think, is important. And also understanding if your adult child does not want to take the business from you, or a partner who's worked for you for 25 years, because with your exit, they might want to exit. And you're not going to know that unless you're talking to them and asking questions. And then it's ultimately important to find out what the other options are if nobody's stepping up. So that's one thing. And then the other is the financial side of taking care of multiple people within the business. Even in the franchise space, people would take care of their partners, their business partners, or their COOs, as well as their children. And they had to know how they were going to set that up, not only from a business organization, but most importantly from a financial, because, there's everybody who's going to want a piece of the pie, including the business owner, especially the business owner, so they can live the rest of their life comfortably and enjoy the things they'd like to do. So you don't want to be at the nth hour and have disagreement and frustration and even fights over it. The other thing that I've been surprised by is sometimes people get unhealthy and they don't want to tell even their family that they're unhealthy.
Do you mean physically unhealthy? As in
physically or mentally, even.
Or mentally,
because,
emotionally?
Some of us want to stay in business, like I said, till we die. And we may not have the mental wherewithal, but we haven't even admitted it to ourselves, let alone being able to admit it to the people around us. So I saw that quite a few times where the franchisor, in this case, the business owner. Right. I saw it many times where the owner would not admit it, but when you engaged with them, you would realize something was not right. And I saw that with people with MS. I saw it with people with dementia, early signs of dementia. I saw it with people with physical challenges who just wouldn't come to meetings for a year, and you wondered where they went. But again, if those conversations are happening early and often, you can create a plan that'll work for that. Because as much as I think I'm going to live to 90, if I don't, I want to have everything set in place so that my adult children, though I don't own a business, my adult children can prosper from what I'm able to do for them and leave for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's interesting. Just the idea of physically capable, right? Mentally, emotionally well, and being able to do that, because I think as human beings, we all want to keep and some of the work that I've done, it's people will call it the ability to be fulfilled, the ability, the opportunity to be relevant, the opportunity to keep relationships and to keep that status that you have, where you've got the opportunity to, you have people looking to you. And so you still are, in a way, even though you're taking care of a lot of people around you, you kind of are that hub and that center of attention. And it's hard to put yourself in a position where you go, I think that I no longer want to be. That's one. Or it's not even if I do want to be, that it's not in the best interest of the business or the people that I serve for me to continue there. And that's a hard one for people to wrap their head around.
I have an example of that when I was doing some consulting, a family-owned business where 2 children, 2 adult daughters, and one daughter became the CEO. The other decided to run the philanthropic side of their business. And they come up with the whole financial and strategic leadership plan, and the business was actually taken over by her, and she's the CEO. Fast forward 3 years, and the parents want to come back to the business. And they are coming back to the business every day. And that's causing a lot of challenges. Now, I was not part of their transition, and I don't know what, I'm just going to say, parameters they put in place or guardrails they put in place, which is also another thing to think about. What are you going to do if mom or dad want to come back? What are you going to do if mom or dad, you created a salary for them on the business and now they want more? How do you plan for that without it being a big fight at the end? And so it's just a lot of those things. And then when you think a transition sometimes is over and it's gone really well, then like I said, in this 2-year situation, you find out, oh no, we're off and up to the races again.
That's right. That's right. And then I think that's just the thought of having a roadmap. Most people have a hard time thinking about leaving and transitioning, and also finding the successor that's going to be the right one, because there's fear in that. So 1, I'm leaving, I'm no longer going to be the center of the world. 2, I'm not sure about the successor coming in. Are they going to be the right one? Can they prove, quote unquote, prove to me that they are the right one, which means I have very high standards that I'm looking for in that. And then, just the open conversations of what if. The idea of having a contingency strategy or a contingency plan, because along the way, we don't know what's going to happen. And who knows, in your example, what made mom and dad come back? Was it, I need more money, and so I need to come in and help so I can earn my money and, kind of take over again? Is it that they figured out that they're not very happy being quote unquote retired on a next adventure and they want relevance and fulfillment again? And so they're going to hop back in. Is it that they miss the family and they want to be with their children? Because guess where their children spend all of their time? They either spend it at home with their family or at the business, just like they did when they were younger. So who knows what the motivation was behind that? But people don't have those conversations. And the roadmap allows you to have them later because you really don't know when those are going to pop up.
Yeah, one thing I keyed in on and wrote it down when you were talking is the owner, trying to ensure that their successor is the right one. Part of that is the owner allowing the successor to be the right one. And what I mean by that, and that's why time is so important, is they're going to make mistakes. They're going to miss a few things, especially in the early days. So, when that owner created the business, they weren't perfect from day one either. But now it's day 20 years and they're experts at everything. But then somebody else is coming in. And I saw that to be a benefit of people coming in early because the next gen would sometimes mess up and they would come up with a way for them to not lose all credibility or integrity with the parents, right? So that's, I think, really important. And as an owner or the leader of the business, letting go, even a little bit of let go to let them shine or rise is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And to watch that and to be there. So there is a crazy amount of pressure, I guess, or, for a successor to perform and to perform well, especially if the parents and also maybe some of the siblings are counting on that business to pay the family and pay the family estate for the asset, right? Because not always do all of the kids get to come in as owners, but many, many times the owners, the parents or the family are footing the bill. They're carrying the note, right? While the successor is paying the note off over time, which can take, 10, 15 plus years to get that done. So there's a lot of pressure on the successor, not only to show up and do the job right, but also they're carrying that asset, which ultimately is going to pay for their parents' retirement.
Right. I think about the pressure, and a lot of times where I saw the most pressure come from was, am I living up to my parents' expectations? And number two was I liquid enough when I entered the business to be successful financially? And I also found that because the owner of the business didn't want to share all the details of their financials, sometimes that put the successor at a huge disadvantage because they didn't know what they didn't know. And then they might do something different on the financial side, especially with the purchase or sale of assets, but they didn't know any better because they weren't taught any better. So that financial pressure coming down, I think about ourselves, we can all relate to it. We've probably all been in times where it wasn't very fun to live paycheck to paycheck. But once you get out of it, you say, I never want to go back to it again. But some business owners or successors find themselves back in it. And I've seen some terrible things happen with successors when the parents put too much pressure on from either end, because sometimes the financial pressure is that the parent has overvalued their business. And that didn't really set that successor up for success. I mean, they took on a larger note than they could afford potentially. And maybe they're being asked to not only support the value of the business today, but what the future value is in relation to paying off siblings. And all that puts the successor at a very big disadvantage. So talking through all those things, I know everybody gets a lawyer and they get a financial advisor or a CPA, but the humanistic side of it is where the problems come in. When we're too afraid to ask the question or too afraid to disclose all the information. it really hinders the next person who comes in behind to be as successful as the person who started it all.
Absolutely. My background, I'm an engineer by degree. And gathering and knowing the information, it's really difficult to solve a problem or make a good decision with only a part of the information, especially if it's being, in a way, I'm the successor. So if it's being withheld from me, mostly not but it could be because they're trying to protect me, right? My parents are trying to protect me, not put too much on me too quickly, but also just a fear of what my reaction as a successor might be once I know how big this is, or once I know, will I become entitled? Will I become, just engaged in a completely different way than I am today? And so there are fears that keep that, keep the parent or keep the transitioner from disclosing information. But if you really think about it, it can hinder you figuring out whether your successor is the right one or not, because they're making decisions kind of in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think a lot about too. Some of the other challenges besides financial is, I'm just going to say culture or style. If I'm a collaborative leader as the owner of the business, and I have a son or daughter who's much more directive, it's going to take that culture a minute to shift. And as the parent turning everything over, it's important to say, well, if my son or daughter is never going to have some of the talent or talent skills or HR skills that I have, then how do I surround them with a person who can? Because that function has to be a part of it. And like I said, the biggest reason I saw people fail was because of financial or people and not developing their people. So it just, developing your own adult child is the most important job if you want them to take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh. So as you navigated some of your experience, what do you think in some of the transitions that you saw, what do you think was absolutely just missing that people just weren't doing that you could see, but they couldn't?
So say that again. What are the transitions that people are?
Well, what do you think? Yeah, as you navigated some of your history, and because you were able to see so many, what did you see that you saw was missing that you saw was missing, but they were almost blind to seeing it missing? What were some of those things where you would say, gosh, if you'd only seen this and done this, or if you'd only, what were some of those kinds of things?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this, are they hungry and passionate about the business and industry? I would start with that, because if they're not, even if they take over, it's going to not succeed as well, or they're going to end up selling it without your input to somebody else, and you might not have a say in what happens there. But I've seen a lot of people tell their parents or business partners, this is what I want, only to find out when they really look at it, it's not what they want. So determining, what the desire is. And then I also say the skill and roles and responsibilities, because I'll just tell you, I worked with a guy who wanted his daughter to take some restaurants. The challenge was she didn't want to be in the restaurants. When you're wearing your Louis Vuittons into the restaurant, and, it's a huge workman's comp safety violation, it becomes very obvious. And, for somebody to have to point that out just is like, did you not see this yourself? That this is not the gig that your daughter really wants to do. She might want to do a part of it, but she doesn't want to run the whole thing, because the whole thing involves, some stuff we don't all like. None of us have a job or own a business that we love every single part of it. And sometimes we can outsource it and sometimes we can't. So I would say those were the biggest things. And then, like I said, the people and financial plan. Also, because I had the opportunity to work with a lot of CPAs, and this is really important in a heavily capitalized business. But if there is reinvestment that is needed, and how do you have those discussions? Do you reinvest before the transition, Do you have your adult child reinvest later? And how does that impact the market value? But sometimes people stick their head in the sand and act like it doesn't need to be reinvested in and just put another whole challenge on that next generation leader because it's either not going to meet safety standards, it's not going to meet the needs of the changing customer, or really it's not going to meet the needs of changing talent, which is really the backbone of any business. So I think that that's really, really important. And the CPAs can definitely help with that. But oftentimes I've seen CPAs say, oh, don't worry about it because your son or daughter will take care of it without really thinking of the financials for the son or daughter, only the financials of the parent.
Of the parent. Yeah, absolutely. And that goes, all of this kind of boils down to a lack of communication in a way. What's missing is lack of communication between the successor or potential successor and the transitioner, right? Whether it's a parent or not, but the successor and the transitioner. And then also, I think that we just did a survey of what people are interested in and interested in learning. And one of the top ones was navigating equality and fairness. And so it really, if you think about the transitioner, maybe saying, hey, daughter, I want you to take over all these restaurants. It's not an ask. It's not an invitation. It's this is what I want. And it could be because they're the oldest or the most responsible out of all the kids or, whatever, or your favorite in some way, shape or form. But is it truly the right fit for them? Do they love it? Is it a passion? Because business and leading a business is such a big responsibility, and it takes a lot of tenacity to be able to hang in there. You got to love it because there's some big downtimes and some big tough times coming.
Yeah. And again, so I'm a big believer that I call that a courageous conversation. And in my consulting business, which is C5 Consultary, one of the fives is courageous conversations. And the reason that is you have to stand up to your fears and ask the questions, not only as the owner of the business, but also as the successor. And probably even more important on the successor because they really need to know what they're getting into for the business to be successful. And so I had this model, feel the fear and do it anyway, right? And so you keep knowing in your gut and you need to ask this question, you need to ask this question, you need to ask this question, but you don't. And the other challenge with that I've seen is not only with the children who come in and take over the business, but then what happens is their spouse, right? It creates a rift between the two of them because the spouse thought some questions were asked and answered, which never were. And now not only is the potential family relationship frayed or struggling, but now a marital relationship could be struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, which then usually the mom isn't so happy because the grandkids get involved and then, right? And then the whole thing snowballs. Yeah, there's so much at risk. So, yeah. Well, gosh, our time, we are out of time almost. We are right at the limit here. And so one, I would love to thank you for being here and thanks for sharing your history and some of your experience with us. And I think it's so valuable and so powerful for people to hear, just that they're not alone. And these things are going on in almost every business transition, and tackling them is something that, makes you feel good. It's something that really works.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and people used to ask me, when should I start having the conversations with my partner or my adult children of what that next phase looks like for them and for the owners themselves? And I don't know that I can give an exact time frame of when that's a potential, but I think it should definitely start when they're in their 20-something and give everybody enough time to go through it, but also create in there's people have the right to change their mind because that's sometimes when family relationships get broken. So one of the family members decides after spending 5 years there, I don't want to do it. after the parent said they were selling the business. They want to come back in. And then how do you do that gracefully and still keep the family together? Because there might not just be a one way fits all. And the more scenario planning I think people can do up front, the better.
Absolutely. So that is a great one thing to leave with our audience today is just, take the time to think through the scenarios and be open and flexible to navigating a roadmap where you can change your direction, hop over to a different road, get around some roadblocks or whatever gets in your way, and hopefully ultimately end at a place where you really want to be, right? Where you really want to be with your family and with those that you care about.
I just want to leave on a high note because I've been sharing some of the challenges I've seen and some of the blind spots that people have. But I would leave on saying most of them work out really, really well. And it requires those tough conversations at times. It requires trust. It requires love. And it requires thinking of the bigger picture when a parent is leaving because their life is so much more than just the career they had. And if they can remember that, but I've been blessed to see so many work out.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Yes.
Isn't that great? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for taking the time and just looking forward to continuing to work with you and doing just amazing things. So thanks, Cody.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Me too. Bye-bye.